And good evening. This is Frankly Speaking Live with your host, Frank Holzhauser, and co-host David Kanyuk. And of course, as always, our friend Ryan is producing the show, and so this is the Friday night cast.
There you go.
That's the cast of characters. So, how was your week?
That was a typical week. It wasn't bad.
Well, besides the fact that I'm...
had some good sushi last night, I'll say that.
Well, race car drivers just say in NASCAR, don't do that the night before the race. Them G-forces will get you.
Yeah.
Well, besides the fact that I'm just slightly livid over the couple of stories this week, I always like to try to start off the show either talking about my friend Christ, my Savior Christ, or my enemy, Lucifer. And this week, I'll start the show out by a post that I wrote last night. Ryan, could you pop that up on the screen? I was reading this text in Revelation 1:7, and this is from the King James Version. And I start out by saying, did you know that a certain group of wicked will die 3 times? Well, according to the beloved apostle John in Revelation 1:7, behold, he cometh with the excuse me. Behold, he cometh with the clouds, and every eye shall see him, and they also which pierced him, and all kindreds of the earth shall wail because of him, even so, amen. Did you catch that? Now, some may argue that we all pierced him, and this is true, but the verse starts out by saying, every eye shall see, meaning at the time of his coming, the righteous living and the wicked living. Then it says, also, they that pierced him. So since every human is born and dies, and the righteous dead will raise to eternal life, and the wicked will raise to judgment and eternal death or separation from Christ, which is death number 2, so a special group appears here in Revelation. Those that pierced him will be raised to see that glory of his return. Then they will die and wait for the resurrection of the wicked at judgment. So that's 1, 2, 3 deaths. For that group, who will be in this group? Herod, Pilate, Caiaphas, Ananias, Judas, the scribes, Pharisees, Roman soldiers who scourged our Savior. It does not say or specify. But one can only guess. But it is sure that a special group who participated in those nail wounds, in the thorns that drew blood from his scalp, and the spear that pierced his side, will stand in awe of the fact. This will rest on their heads. Again, we all crucified him, but this is the ones who swung the hammers. So I just thought it was kind of interesting. It's not necessarily something that I particularly wanted to debate or go on and on about, but it was just kind of strange that we all are born, we all die, unless, we happen to be alive at the time of Christ's coming. But if we die before his return, we'll be resurrected to eternal life, and those who died wicked will raise up to judgment at the end of time. But God's resurrecting this special group of people to witness his second coming. And I just thought that was kind of interesting that I wouldn't want to be standing in their shoes.
Well, isn't it interesting that they're actually, I've seen articles where they're talking about how Google is actually working on cheating death. And and this is something that I've harped on. They're talking about the work of Ray Kurzweil, who is the leader of the transhumanist movement, kind of their high priest, their visionary, so to speak. And they are working on the life extension technologies for the purpose of cheating death, and I believe cheating judgment. And I think that's kind of the core philosophy behind these people and what they're setting up with this absolute technocratic control grid. They're setting up all of this for the control of Lucifer when he enters the planet, handing over the keys to him, and he's handing over the keys to these technologies for them with the understanding that they will be able to cheat judgment. Of course, we know that that is not going to be the case. There is no escape from judgment, and that's what that verse is talking about. There will be no denial of who Jesus is at his second coming.
Well, man is always trying to cheat something. You know, the Tower of Babel, he was trying to cheat a second flood, potentially, if God sent one. And, of course, God, with the rainbow, promised he wouldn't flood the world with a worldwide flood again. They thought they was going to build the Tower of Babel to escape that. And I think sometimes modern medicine is almost a modern medical Tower of Babel, you know, that we try to extend man's lifespan, which is fine in and of itself. But I think God's got it to the point where he has it just about where he wants it. A little less than 100 years, you're born, you get educated, you live a little bit of life, and then you die. You don't live to be 900 years old like our parents, Adam and Eve. But I guess we're going to get right to it here, because this is the story that I posted on my Facebook that we would be talking about tonight, and this is what's got me frosted. And so I'll get right to it here. Well, the media has stumbled onto the Holy Grail. It's knocked CNN's balls to the wall coverage of the missing airliner off the air.
They haven't found it?
Oh.
Sorry.
They believe they have captured a racist in his natural environment. Apparently, a NBA owner of the LA Clippers has been recorded by a vindictive mistress baiting the owner into a race-baited conversation. I've heard much of it, and I'm sorry, but so what? First, this is a private conversation, not a public outburst. Second, it would not be admissible in court, in most courts in the land. It's free speech. If the Clippers owner doesn't want his girlfriend in posts with other men, including black men, again, so what? Even if he is a raging racist, he has the right to his views in private. How many of your conversations could hold up to scrutiny that you have in private? Most blacks have the same views about whites. They don't want to see their women in pictures with white guys. The pressure will mount on the NBA to do something, and of course I wrote this before the hammer came down, to do something stupid, but it will be stupid. We got us a sacrificial lamb to slaughter on the altar of racism to keep race alive and well. I just don't care. This isn't a story to me. I'm freaking tired of the thought police. Get a frickin' life. And what the hell happened to the liberals' dribble that they may not agree with your speech, but they will fight to the death your right to say it? Now we aren't even going to give folk the right to a private phone call or a meeting. Gosh, I remember a guy who said he wanted to cut Obama's balls off after calling him the N-word. That was an open mic. No problem, though, Reverend Jackson. The media wasn't listening.
Well, what have we been talking about the past couple of weeks? What's one thing that I've said is that the final two things that are going to be absolutely attacked before absolute tyranny is imposed is the right to bear arms and free speech. And we're seeing that happen. We're seeing that happen with this. This is a horribly dangerous precedent that they're setting. I mean, think about that. This guy isn't a private conversation, and this guy is an old dirty jerk. I mean, I'm not going to argue that. But yeah, to be privately recorded on a private conversation. If this were a public thing, if you or I were to say the same thing on the radio, then we could be taken to task because we're out in the public. We're saying this in public, then we can answer for our views. This is a private conversation, and it doesn't matter how wrong his views are. It's still a private conversation. The question that needs to be answered is, why is she recording these conversations anyway? Who's putting her up to this? how did this get leaked and why?
Well,
That's what I don't understand. And nobody's answering those questions. They just want to go and crucify this guy.
my first reaction to the story, and it's a bad thing it's a bad habit to get into by pointing to someone else's bad behavior to cover bad behavior. Now, immediately they started bringing up things about Spike Lee. In fact, there was a story out about the Orlando Magic's owner who's had some derogatory things to say about gay marriage and the fact that he don't think gays should be married.
Right. It's about establishing this precedent of thought crime, basically, that there are certain thoughts you are just not allowed to have, and that government eventually will be able to step in and say, well, those aren't acceptable thoughts. Those aren't acceptable views. You're going to have to be re-educated on that.
And then we have Senator Ed Markey, who replaced John Kerry from Massachusetts. And he has introduced and wants to sponsor a bill or something that would police the internet for hate speech.
Yep, I've got that here. It was, this is from WND. Yeah, this was from Ed Markey and Hakeem Jeffries from New York. It says the Hate Crime Reporting Act of 2014 would create an updated comprehensive report examining the role of the internet and other telecommunications in encouraging hate crimes based on gender, race, religion, ethnicity, or sexual orientation, and create recommendations to address such crimes, stated a news release from Markey's office. The one-page bill reviewed by WND calls for the Justice Department and the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights to analyze information on the use of telecommunications, including the internet, broadcast television and radio, cable television, public access television, commercial mobile services, and other electronic media to advocate and encourage violent acts in the commission of crimes of hate. The bill does not define which actions by broadcasters would be considered to have encouraged violence, seemingly leaving that open to interpretation. So exactly who's going to be the panel that is determining what is acceptable and what is not?
And who do you want sitting on that panel judging your speech?
Exactly. I seem to remember the last big radio host that was going around advocating violence was old Hal Turner back about 8 years ago. And when Hal Turner was put on trial, it came out, old Hal Turner was actually an informant for the FBI.
Yeah.
Well, so the hate speech that they try to put out there is actually sponsored by government in order to try and provoke a reaction.
Well, I was on a couple of local talk shows. Well, I shouldn't say couple. I was on a local talk show this week, and I was on a national talk show, Red Eye, at night. But I got a conversation with Simon Conway here early this week, and I pat Simon on the back. If he's this kind of great guy, that's fine. Well, no, some people were saying, well, he was baited into this conversation. Conway's defense was, well, you couldn't bait me into that conversation. Okay, I'm glad your hands are clean, but what about another conversation you're having about some other topic or some other subject? Do you want that laid open and laid privy to, to your sponsors, to your radio show, to your listeners, and then have the weight of the speech police come down on your head?
Absolutely.
And I made the point that, and I mentioned some local talk show hosts, Fallon, Bradshaw, Dace and Conway and Michelson. I would simply say these ought to be the first people who make their living using their speech that would want to not defend his comments, but defend the fact that he has a right to the expectation of a private conversation.
These people should be up in arms, but they don't want to be thrown in the camp of someone who's considered to be a racist.
So we're going to pick this conversation up when we return. This has been Frankly Speaking Live with your host, Frank Holzhauser, and co-host David Kaniuk, and we will return shortly.
All across America, there are countless numbers of people struggling with addiction and other life-controlling issues. Probably someone you know and love. There is a way out. There is hope. Transformations Treatment Center in Delray Beach, Florida, has a unique approach to substance abuse treatment. Call now and ask about our Guaranteed Success program or log on to transformationstreatment.com. Transformations. Change your life, change your relationships, transform your world.
Yes, now your favorite programs on Webcast One Live can all be watched and listened to on any Android or Apple device. Your phone, tablet, or iPad. Yes, your favorite shows on Webcast One Live are available live or on podcast wherever you go. Let me introduce to you some of our great shows.
Shalom! Every week on Understanding the World with Rabbi David Kaufman, we'll talk about issues in the Middle East, issues related to the Jewish tradition and religious traditions in general, and keep you up to date on exactly what's going on around the world. You may know some of the story, but you haven't heard all of the story until you've heard it on Understanding the World with Rabbi David Kaufman and our special guests we have on every week.
Hey, this is Doc with Doc and Lefty. I want to tell you about our brand new time slot. It's from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. It's on the same night, Tuesdays. We now follow Ed Fallon and the Fallon Forum on webcast1live.com. I want to tell you a little bit about our show. Our show is focused on local, state, and national, and sometimes international politics. We like to keep people updated and informed. We also have very interesting guests. So please join us every Tuesday from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. on webcast1live.com.
So when you want to watch your favorite Webcast One program, remember, there's an app for that. You know, there's an app for that.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Get away from us, you mean old credit card. We don't have any more money. We're in trouble now. Save us! Help! Somebody save us! Somebody help! Help! Save us!
Hi, I'm Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of Des Moines. If your credit card's a little too animated, give us a call.
Hooray! We're saved! Consumer Credit! You're our hero!
And this is Frankly Speaking Live with your host, Frank Holzhauser, and co-host David Kanyuk. In my haste to start the show, I forgot to give the call numbers. And if you would like to join our show, you can call toll-free, 855-244-0077. And if you want to contact us locally with questions or comments, that's 244-0077. Well, back to the conversation, and before I forget, you were mentioning some fallout, and I would just say that last night on the scroll at the bottom of one of the news networks, I saw that the president of the LA chapter of the NAACP resigned.
Really?
Yeah. So there's some people that's got some egg on their faces, and there's some people, even some of African-American folk, who is starting to wonder why this guy was given these awards to start with.
Well, he wheeled up a truck full of money. That's all it takes, really, to get some of these awards.
Well, apparently the hypocrisy is just, knows no bounds here. I mean, when apparently the guy had a past of denying housing to certain individuals.
Right.
And this was well known, and he's been sued in the courts over it. He's a litigious, if that's the right word.
No, that's the right word.
He's a litigious type. And he had a couple of awards by the NAACP, and he was about to receive a third one or fourth one, and Al Sharpton, if I'm not mistaken, was supposed to give him the award, or was he just supposed to be there?
I don't know. I haven't heard that, but that's... I'm sure old Reverend Al was just beside himself over on MSNBC the other day.
But again, I just cannot beat on this point enough. I understand that the NBA, I understand this to the detriment of the league or the detriment of the sport. Following NASCAR over the years, when a car owner or a driver does something that looks bad upon the sport, they want to use this little small writing in their contract that don't bring no detriment on the sport.
Well, I think it probably would have warranted an investigation to see if he's discriminating against players of color in the NBA. It probably would have.
That would have been very warranted if he had made a public rant or outburst.
Right, and that's at the max. But yeah, like you said, this is a private thing. Now, I think the private, the market would have taken care of this on its own.
Oh, sure.
If I were a player on the Clippers, I would say I'm not going to play until this guy resigns, and I think that would be absolutely just.
And what
if I were a player on an opposing team, I'd probably say, you know what, I'm not going to play when we're playing the Clippers, and that would be fine.
What spoke louder volumes was the fans' ticket sales.
Exactly, and I think the ticket sales would have plummeted. The open market would have taken care of this, and then the guy would have been forced to do it on his own, unless he's just a completely stubborn cuss. But stubborn cusses usually are stubborn up to a point, and then when they see how much money they're actually losing, they'll go ahead and capitulate there.
There's so many angles to this story, and again, I don't want to point. Here's one. Snoop Dogg, he had a profanity-laced diatribe. I don't know if anybody's been able to catch that.
Well, when it's Snoop Dogg, it's poetry.
Well, this is true. Twizzle finizzle. But does it dawn on old Snoop that it's free speech that allows him to make that diatribe?
That's right, and free speech that has allowed him and his ilk to put out some of the most violent recordings that have ever been done.
Now, I understand that Spike Lee, after he came back from a trip from Africa, has stated that it caused him to have a desire to want to pick up a gun and shoot white people. He's also stated that when he sees an interracial couple, he stares daggers at them so that they know that he disapproves of their interracial.
Sure. He's the one that was lamenting the gentrification of neighborhoods in Brooklyn.
Exactly. And he is in NBA commercials.
Yeah. So
he's associated with the NBA.
No sponsors are going down at that point.
So that's what I want to get away from, is pointing at bad behavior by pointing at other bad behavior.
It's not about bad behavior for bad behavior. It's about setting precedent that certain thoughts are not acceptable. It's about establishing the precedent for thought crime.
But our president...
We've seen Christians that have been targeted. You know, the owner of Chick-fil-A who just says, oh, I don't believe in gay marriage. He's targeted because he doesn't have that belief that is now the acceptable societal norm.
Well, our president routinely uses something called presidential privilege so that he can have, so that people who give him advice can have free access to the Oval Office to give advice without being outed.
Well, I'm not sure if she was giving him advice.
Yeah. Well, it's in the same vein.
Right.
In that, do we want every private conversation we're engaged in this life to be outed in public and have our job and our livelihood?
Well, that's just it. We've been acclimated to this idea that every private conversation is being monitored by the NSA.
Well, we know they are, but should they be disclosed and then have our job hinge on how the public...
That's what they're setting the precedent for. That's what it's all about. We're already seeing fallout. We're seeing, here's a story that came out yesterday. Lefties target Christian homophobes in the NBA. You were talking about the Orlando Magic owner. Let's see here. Now that the NBA has handed the progressive left a victory and made it a crime for team owners to hold politically incorrect opinions on race, the next phase of the purge can begin, excluding and exiling Christians for opposing gay marriage. Earlier this week, Torre Murray, a player for the New York Knicks, told MSNBC the NBA now needs to target owners opposed to gay marriage. He said, quote, Some of them are not the most savory folks. Some of them are bankrolling anti-gay marriage initiatives, he said. Murray also said owners who support fracking should be ostracized. So apparently, drilling for oil is not an acceptable worldview. AOL HuffPo piled on when Craig Crawford wrote that although Donald Sterling was booted for his private opinions on social etiquette, others with more dangerous political ideas remain. Doug DeVos, who owns the Orlando Magic and the direct selling company Amway, gave the cash to the anti-gay National Organization for Marriage back in 2009 through his family's charitable foundation, much like those rotten Chick-fil-A folks, he wrote on Wednesday. I added in rotten. I'll just paraphrase that. Crawford was stunned that a boycott in response to DeVos's personal beliefs went nowhere. Quote, "Not a peep from anyone associated with the NBA about the values they are now touting," unquote, he complained. So yeah, now we see that this precedent has been set. Now they're going to keep targeting other people. So where is the line?
As we've talked the last couple of weeks, and if anybody has been a viewer of the show, we've talked about the speech police trying to take the word bossy out of our vernacular. If somebody don't stand up for free speech, one day we're going to wake up and we're not going to have any.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Not that we've got an abundance of it now, but what we do have, we want to hang on to what we have. And we keep taking words, phrases out. I mean, if you just take everything Donald Sterling said, basically he didn't use the N-word.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't say he hated anybody. He was simply telling this a girlfriend of his, and let's use that term loosely because some may even think she's a prostitute. Do whatever you want to do, have relations with them, feed them, whatever you want to do. Just don't bring these people to my games that you've had yourself posted all over the internet, Instagram with, so that my friends are calling me up and rubbing it in my face that my gal's out with somebody.
His 80-year-old manhood is being belittled.
So if you just replace the word black with communist, Nazi skinhead, pick your word. Just say, well,
that's acceptable.
Well, but what I'm saying is, well, say, feed them Nazis, have relations with them Nazis or them communists. Just don't bring them to my games and don't have their face plastered all over Instagram. There's no controversy.
Yeah.
All he said was the word black. Now, I'll grant you, maybe he has some deep-seated racial issues.
I think he just doesn't like people in general.
We can all maybe agree on that. But I think the person can have deep-seated issues and still have a right to view them in private. Just as black people have the right to say what they want against the white in private. And they do.
Right.
I mean, you listen to their comedy clubs, they rip whites one side up and down the other. Now, Charles Barkley, who is one of the, in interest of disclosure, he's one of my favorite ball players, as in talent. The guy was 6'4" in stocking feet. He led the league in rebounding 5 years straight against guys who were 7 foot plus. The guy was a tenacious ball player, and I thought him every bit as good or better than Michael Jordan. That was my personal opinion. But Charles routinely sticks his big foot in his mouth. Charles said, well, don't you know this is a black league, Ernie? Okay, now what if, what's the hockey player, what's the famous Wayne Gretzky?
Yeah.
What if the great Gretzky was to say, well, Ernie, the National Hockey League is a white league. Can you imagine the weight that would come down on somebody that said that? But
He'd be banned.
But Charles Barkley can absolutely, he's trying to defend one thing and he sticks his foot in the mouth in the other.
Absolutely. It's about having a standard of two sets of standards.
Now, in the frenzy, supposedly one of my nemesis of my hero, Dr. J. Julius Erving for the Philadelphia 76ers, who was my one of my all-time, basketball heroes. Nemesis was Kareem Abdul-Jabbar for the LA Lakers in that period. Jabbar actually had some moxie and savvy to say he brought up the free speech issue, that he was really upset by the fact of this recorded conversation. But all the right-wingers, Hannity, O'Reilly, all these guys, they're the people that you should think that would be defending speech because they're making a living using their speech. And they're jumping on the side of smash Donald Sterling.
Right, because it's about setting that precedent. I had been thinking about this in a metaphor about our struggle against an ever-encroaching government. Just think of the image that we would have had we been allowed to exercise a voice through the free market by having an empty stadium and players who refuse to show up. What a metaphor that would have been in our fight against this encroaching government.
We're heading upon our top of the hour break, and this has been Frankly Speaking Live with your host Frank Holzhauser and co-host David Kaniuk. We shall return shortly.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
I'm Brian Leach, owner and general manager of Service Legends. I brought along a couple of the home comfort heroes.
Hi, I'm Tammy Wells.
I am Nick Wondershide.
I'm administrative manager.
I'm the senior technician
from Service Legends.
It seems like every good thing, when you feel it to the bone that it's good, there's a lot of hard work put behind it. I don't think that you can fake it and have it turn out good.
You know, if we seem like, okay, that's just weird, it's just a furnace, why would you believe so deeply in a furnace? It's not just that, you know, we want to show the world that you can have good service.
Yeah, I mean, it's your home.
You know, it's built into our daily trainings, it's built into our culture, that we're gonna do whatever it takes to have each client say they love us, period.
That's why we spend all the hours in the training that we do. And if we guarantee it's gonna be a good experience for you, or else it's free, what type of work do you think we're gonna do?
There is a guarantee.
Temperature selection guarantee, fixed rider it's free guarantee, comfort guarantee, best value guarantee. All of these guarantees hold us accountable to ensuring that we exceed your expectations. And if for whatever reason we'd fail and we can't make it right, we guarantee all of those guarantees with a 100% money back guarantee.
I mean, if you don't think that your technician can fix it right, are you gonna say that to a client? No.
You don't have to worry about having a technician come to your house.
We drug test, background check all of our team members. We put safe people in your home. Each and every one of our service techs, 400 hours a year in training.
You tell it the minute they walk in the door. They know what they're doing, they've done their homework, and they actually truly care about what you want.
Because at the end of the day, you're the person that makes sure I have a job.
They're gonna be listening. They're gonna wanna know what your challenges are. Then they're gonna come and give you options, and you get to choose.
If I'm there to help and I make it easy and painless, I did my job right that day.
Well, when it comes to your comfort, safety, and your family, you know, you don't necessarily go buy the most expensive, but you get the most bang for your buck.
Oh, it's worth it, because there's a lot of people that will find a way to get it to work right now, and then leave, and then come back, charge you again, and the cycle just repeats itself. So when I'm out there looking at the furnace, I want to find why it failed today. How can we change the part today with something that you're not going to have to worry about? Is it worth changing the part today? I mean, you can put a lot of money into a furnace. I can fix parts all day. There's good job security in that for me. But is it the right thing for you?
I get a lot of the phone calls of after the technicians are there. They're just in awe. They're like, wow, you guys are great. I mean, I don't even know what to say. You guys are great. Everything you did was perfect. It was great.
Keep going though, I like this.
Just give us a try. I'm gonna take all the risk.
I've got the time to make this right. I've got the support to make it right.
Just check us out.
And if you don't see the value in what we do,
I mean, fixed rider, it's free or 100% money back.
Enough said.
Welcome back to Frankly Speaking Live. I'm your host, Frank Holzhauser, and co-host David Kaniuk, and Ryan in the control room. Well, without trying to turn this into the whole show, which is entirely possible, because I'm just this story's just, it's got me riled up this week. I'm fit to be tied on this story. But we need to kind of wrap it up and move on to a couple of other stories. But you did have one interesting.
Well, I guess the wrap up would be, I just feel bad that the free market has not been allowed to decide this guy's fate himself. And that's not saying that I'm for mob rule, but like I was saying earlier, thinking about it in terms of a metaphor for what we're facing with things like the NSA, just our ability as human beings to stand up and fight for something that we believe in. The NBA has come in and acted as the role of Big Brother almost.
Judge, jury, and executioner.
Exactly. Saying, you know what, you guys, you can't handle this on your own. We're going to do it for you. And see how we've made everything better? Just shh, it's okay. Go back to sleep. We need those instances where we are riled up enough to rise up and protest something. Think about all those kids who protested the Vietnam War, as opposed to the 5 people who protested the Iraq War. And well, it seems like 5 people. I mean, what's it going to take for people to get riled up? And the things that people do get riled up are the most ridiculous, simplistic, meaningless things in the world.
Again, the hypocrisy is what it's just got me tied and fried.
It's the dangerous precedent. And the biggest fallout, I say, to wrap this up, the most unfortunate thing that I would say about this is that Dennis Hoff, the owner of the renowned Bunny Ranch over in Las Vegas, he's banned Sterling for life.
Okay.
I'm saying
from
that
the
as
Bunny Ranch.
Yeah.
Well, what was the story about somebody being fired?
A company fired an employee for tweeting that bigot Sterling had right to private opinion. This was from Truth Revolt. According to a tweet from their official Twitter account, Turtle Rock Studios, the company behind the hit video game Left 4 Dead and the upcoming Evolve, does not believe in the basic principle of freedom of speech. The tweet came as justification for the move by the company to fire their community manager, Josh Olin, over his tweet from Wednesday pointing out that disgraced racist Donald Sterling does in fact have the right to free speech. Josh Olin tweeted, "Here's an unpopular opinion. Donald Sterling has the right as an American to be an old bigot in the security of his own home. He's a victim." Absolutely right.
Yeah, okay.
Turtle Rock Studios replied by firing him, and then they tweeted, "The comments made by our former community manager stand in stark contrast to our values as a game development studio."
Well, here's what irritates me. The hypocrisy of the whole thing, because as long as he had wheelbarrows of cash rolling in, they were overlooking the fact that he was discriminating in his housing practices. And at the same time, they're simultaneously giving him awards.
Right.
Now that they've identified him as a racist and they're going to lay him out and dissect him on the altar of racism, now we get the coffers at Rainbow Coalitions and all the organizations that Sharpton and Jackson run. The funds are rolling in because to keep racism alive.
Right. This is a godsend for them.
This story never ends.
Right. And that kind of makes you wonder, why did she record it? What motivated her? What's going on there? There's more to this story.
Well, again, we want to wrap this story up, but I have heard some things that Magic Johnson has been in the running for a long time of wanting to purchase this team, him and some other investors. And, of course, the Los Angeles Lakers, which he played for, is not for sale. And this is some opportunity to purchase an NBA team. And you can, at the same time, make a bid to purchase it and drive the price of the team down all in one shot. So they think that there's some collusion going on between this gal and Magic Johnson, because if she knows Magic and she knows that he has had this desire to buy the team. But to keep from the temptation of keeping this story going, because I could go on for about another half hour, we wanted to talk about the other story that's got me just a bit hot under the collar this week, and that would be the new revelations on Benghazi. And you?
Yeah, go on. What do you have there?
Well, I guess, and I would just say that a 5-year-old, a 6-year-old would know that 7 weeks from a presidential election, that they're trying to insulate the president of the United States from any kind of a negative story. And the email that the supposed smoking gun email that has come out is that the emphasis that they wanted Susan Rice to go on 5 talk shows. Now, somebody on one of the talking panels this week said that in any administration that they can remember, Bush's, Clinton's, whoever, they can never remember somebody going out and appearing on 5 talk shows. They was wanting to spin this story.
Right.
To insulate the president. Now, I don't understand. The guy's been elected. There's no serious attempts to impeach him. Why can't we just say once in a while, hey, we stepped into that one. That was, we really made a mistake on that, and just come clean on it and say, hey, we was trying to protect the president, because everybody knows that.
Well, there's a lot more to that Benghazi story. It wasn't, obviously, we know now that it was not we've known from the beginning that it was not some protest because of some dinky video that was made by a CIA asset. The bottom line on that Benghazi story is that was a clearinghouse for weapons that were going to Al-Qaeda in Syria that we were funding. And that's what they did not want getting out prior to the election, that we're openly funding Al-Qaeda.
Okay.
And that's an absolute fact. And that's what this entire thing was about, was covering their tracks, because Chris Stevens got cold feet and said, whoa, I'm not going to fund these people. I'm not going to help you do this anymore. So they said, okay. They took him out. That's what this was about. This was a hit. This was a hit on Chris Stevens. Now, there are some generals that are going around that have said that the plan was to hire these people to kidnap them, and then that was going to be like an October surprise. Mm-hmm. And I can't remember the name of the general that said that. I'll have to look that up maybe during the break. But the plan was to kidnap Chris Stevens as an October surprise, and then we'd get him released, and that would be this big heroic moment for Obama. But it turned wrong, because those darn Navy SEALs came in and did their job, and then the mob got ticked. They thought Obama had double-crossed him, so they went in and killed and then raped Chris Stevens and killed him. I don't know if that's the case, but what we do know is that it was a clearinghouse for weapons that were going in for Al-Qaeda in Syria. Chris Stevens was not compliant with that.
Obviously, we know that there's more to the story than's being told, but
and the military was told to stand down for 8 hours.
Who made that call?
Exactly.
But above and beyond that, they kept selling this story of a movie trailer weeks and weeks and weeks. And I contend to this day they're still trying to. I mean, Susan Rice, I vividly remember her the morning of the talk show she was on, I believe Fox. She come on and she immediately said, there's no excuse for this.
Mm-hmm.
Let me state categorically right off the bat, there's no excuse. But then continued to offer an excuse of the movie trailer.
This is treason, man.
And according to Sean Smith's mother, Leon Panetta, Hillary Clinton, and Barack Obama stood within 2 inches of her face and said, we think that this is a movie trailer, and if we find out anything different and we know anything different, we will let you know. She says, I still have not received a phone call from any of the three.
No, of course not. Of course not. They don't care. And now, then Carney says that, so this is all coming from an email that was instructing Susan Rice.
Ben Rhodes.
Right. And Carney says that these Benghazi emails, well, we're not talking about Benghazi in the Benghazi emails. And any link to it is just a conspiracy theory. White House Press Secretary Jay Carney is not having success convincing the White House press pool and even the press pool, the most complacent group of people,
sad sacks,
so-called reporters that I've ever seen, that the recent smoking gun email about Benghazi released by Judicial Watch on Tuesday had nothing to do with Benghazi. While answering the questions of Fox News' Ed Henry during his Thursday press briefing, Carney made his latest attempt to convince Americans that it's time to move on and that there is nothing new in the Rhodes email, opining this is a conspiracy theory in search of a conspiracy. This is Jay Carney, the same guy who has communist propaganda as decoration in his kitchen. Henry said, he questioned him, if the email was not about Benghazi, why did the White House turn it over to a conservative group seeking information about Benghazi? Carney, you would have to ask the State Department about how they respond to FOIA requests. I would, again, point you to the fact that, all you have to do is read it, Ed, right? Top line points, goals, that kind of stuff. The only mention of Benghazi in the email is a question about what's your response to a story about the independent newspaper in the UK that we had intelligence 48 hours in advance of the attack that was ignored. Yada, yada, yada. Henry, it's not about Benghazi. Why turn it over in a Benghazi suit? It seems you would, and then Carney replies, you would have to ask the State Department, blah, blah, blah. He says, this is a conspiracy theory in search of a conspiracy.
Well, I'm going to try to be politically correct here and say that Jay Carney is a derriere puppet. And
he's the mouth of Sauron, in Lord of the Rings.
And you can fill in your word for derriere. But the email clearly was trying to show they was pushing a narrative that this was a spontaneous outbreak of violence that happened from a movie trailer. And Hillary Clinton told Sean Smith's mother, we're going to get the dastardly character that directed that movie. Okay. But in that same email, it mentioned that they wanted to push this narrative because they didn't want for there to be a narrative of a broader failure of policy.
Right. Plus, they also wanted to cover the fact that they were shipping arms into Syria to use against Assad.
Well, again...
That's what it boils down to.
Yeah. Well, again, there's just so much to talk about, so little time to talk about it. But we're coming upon our final break, and this has been Frankly Speaking Live with your host, Frank Holzhauser, and co-host David Kaniuk. And we shall be back soon.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live. Hey, psst. Let me let you in on a little secret. You ready? Always try to do business with people, not places. Especially if you seek honest Christian business people. And when it comes to my car, I really need to trust who's working on it. Now, my family is so blessed. A few years ago, we found a family-owned automobile repair shop that operates as a Christian business also. Open, honest, reliable, trustworthy. It's AMCO on Hickman Road in front of Kmart, and it's a family-owned Christian operating business. This family treats your car as if it was their car. Everything from oil changes to transmission repair and everything in between. So the next time you feel the need to be at peace with your choice of who you can trust with your car, give AMCO on Hickman a chance to serve you. And tell them Max sent you.
All across America, there are countless numbers of people struggling with addiction and other life-controlling issues. Probably someone you know and love. There is a way out. There is hope. Transformations Treatment Center in Delray Beach, Florida, has a unique approach to substance abuse treatment. Call now and ask about our Guaranteed Success program or log on to transformationstreatment.com. Transformations. Change your life. Change your relationships. Transform your world.
we're back with Frankly Speaking Live. I'm your host, Frank Holzhauser, and co-host David Kaniuk. And we've been having on our show here, if you've been following us, we've been having a segment which we call Hypocrites of the Week, and potentially any sane-speaking liberals of the week, of which I didn't find any of those scoundrels this week.
Wow.
But my hypocrite is, it's not really a particular hypocrite, but I'll have to read it to you. And knowing what you know about me and my show called Frankly Speaking, generally I'm pretty frank and I let it fly. Sometimes to the chagrin of some, but hypocrites. Golly gee whiz, we had a botched execution this week by lethal injection. Well, actually, when I posted it, it was last night in Oklahoma. And wouldn't you know it, there is a media frenzy to stop the death penalty due to, quote, cruel and unusual punishment. No mention of the cruelty to the victim, beaten, raped, and buried alive, but does it dawn on these fools that botched abortions happen all too frequent in this country, and even good old President Obama voted when he was in either the state Senate or federal Senate for these botched murder attempts, could not receive medical aid or comfort. I'll tell you what, when you stop killing the unborn, maybe we can have a debate to end the death penalty. But then take your bleeding heart liberalism and put it in your ear. I just don't care that much that the murderer suffered just a little bit. But as not to come off, it bothered me, the fact that I want to celebrate every life and mourn every death. I don't find no joy in the torture of even a criminal.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the hypocrisy of the abortion that they can't. The same ones that support abortion is just out to stop the death penalty. So I had a couple people posted on my post, and I just didn't want to be misunderstood that, humans make mistakes. Baseball players have gotten beaned and died. We still play baseball. People have died during laying the infrastructure, and we still drive cars. We make mistakes. We're not going to be perfect, but here's a little bit to the story that maybe everybody don't know. And it's that I wasn't celebrating the guy's pain and death. I was poking with a sharp stick the hypocrisy of the abortion/murder, condemning one and condoning the other. And the truth of the matter is the cocktail had to be changed because Europe suppliers, many of them whom are opponents of the death penalty, stopped the supply of the sedative, leaving Oklahoma scrambling to find another cocktail recipe. So it's really kind of their fault. The man died the death he suffered. I just so object to the heartless abortions we endure in this nation, and no one gets to speak on behalf of their suffering. Now, everybody's in a frenzy to speak about the suffering of this individual of the botched execution.
Mm-hmm.
Who spoke for his victim? Who spoke?
Absolutely.
Who speaks for these victims of abortions? 330. Democrats got it legal, safe, and rare. They got the legal. They got the legal part down. They got the safe part down, but it's anything but rare.
60 million is the total. I
Well,
believe
330,000 was the record last year. 330,000 plus was the record number. So they've got it everything but safe.
And like we talked about last week, ethicists now are saying that, well, we should be able to kill kids after they're born.
So
they're not a human until they're like 3.
So
is what they're arguing.
My hypocrites in the story is not particularly a person, but a group of people who support abortion, that are out there clamoring to stop the death penalty.
And they can't see the difference between the innocent and the guilty, it seems like. Well, I got a couple of hypocrites. I wanted to hit on Utah lawmaker Representative Chris Stewart of Utah moves to Oh no, wait, that's not it. I apologize. Well, I'll look for the other one. I'll hit on Sarah Palin, who said that she would like all terrorists to know that if she were in charge, waterboarding is how the United States would baptize them. At least that's what the former Alaskan governor and ex-vice presidential nominee told thousands of attendees this weekend at the National Rifle Association's annual convention in Indianapolis. If I were in charge, Palin said Saturday during a stand and fight rally at Lucas Oil Stadium, our enemies would know that waterboarding is how we'd baptize terrorists. Well, here's the thing, Sarah. These people have not been convicted. Many of them have not been charged. They've just been snatched out of their homelands and tortured to try and get any little piece of information. And most of the information that we got has been proven to be absolutely inaccurate. And most of these people are sitting around rotting in black sites all over Europe or in Guantanamo Bay, having done absolutely nothing wrong. We would give our agents money, send them out to the field. They would offer tribal warlords sums of money in order to point them towards Al-Qaeda. And these guys are like, well, heck, old Ahmed over here, he's with Al-Qaeda, some 15-year-old sheep herder. So we would snatch him and waterboard him for 10 years. It's things like this, Sarah Palin. It's reasons like this. That's why America is not able to lead as a moral authority any longer. When we accept torture, we're no better than the North Vietnamese. We're no better than the Japanese who tortured prisoners during World War II. We're no better than the communist Chinese or every other stinking totalitarian scumbag regime that's come before us. When we step down to that level, we accept absolute evil. And for you to say that use baptizing in some religious metaphor is absolutely hypocritical, and it's deplorable. And that's why one of the reasons I'm not a Sarah Palin fan. I do have a kudos of the week.
You did have one, huh?
I did.
Okay.
Old Rob Schneider, actually, the
Saturday Night Live guy?
I hate to call him a comedian because I really...
Don't want to insult comedians?
Exactly. Schneider spoke with Chris Stiegel on Talk Radio 1210 WPHT about the struggle comedians face in today's current political environment. Schneider struck an ominous tone when discussing the path he sees the country on. Democracies don't end well. We are sliding very fast towards fascism. It's an ugly kind of thing. There's this kind of mob mentality that we have to be careful of, he said. He believes comedians are pressured towards one side of the political spectrum. There's a polarization that's happening. I do think well, I hate that sentence. I do think you can look at government and go, wow, it is out of control now. And if you do criticize or tend to be not directly along a liberal stand, you can get murdered, Schneider commented. Schneider was very critical of the president's handling of the economy, and he feels certain policies are impacting businesses. There's not one segment of business under the Obama administration that hasn't been hurt. He attacks for-profit schools, which is totally an elitist thing from a guy that went to Harvard, I think for free, by the way, Schneider said. He was also critical of the media for being overly influenced by the government and not standing up for the American people. So kudos to you, for Rob Schneider, for being able to stand up and speak out for what's happening in this country, and that is a slide towards fascism. And that's what we see. That's kind of the theme that we kicked off with the Don Sterling thing. As deplorable as he might be as a human being, it's fascist of us to say that he does not have the right to say whatever he wants to say in the privacy of his own home in a private telephone conversation.
Well, it's the old saying, speech wasn't designed to protect the speech we all like.
Exactly.
It was designed to protect the speech we don't necessarily like.
Exactly. Ladies and gentlemen, if you don't exercise the rights that you have, you will lose those rights. And fairly quickly.
And if any potential talk show hosts are hearing this program, you best be standing up, guys, because one of these days, wait till they come down on your speech.
That's right. Well, they're already proposing Chinese internet-style IDs. So they want you to be able to log your real identities. No anonymity on the web anymore.
Well, as always, this has been Frankly Speaking Live, and I'm your host, Frank Holzhauser, and co-host David Kanyuk, and Ryan producing. We will see you next week at this same time.